Alright, Gary. Shush. Wait for a few seconds. Yeah, I know. Okay, guys. Well, you thought you were watching Disclaimers by Ed Johnson. It's actually Education by Ed. And due to this, we're going to drill one thing into your skull multiple times. It's Exhibit 05051. And basically, it's saying how taxes are voluntary. Listen to this. I'll stop it after a bit.
When the liberal group got a exempt status, and 3 that I just mentioned didn't for over 2 years. Mr. Nunes mentioned Ms. Lerner. Who was her boss in 2011 and 2012? Who did she report to?
I believe it would have been
Sarah Ingram, maybe?
part of that time, and part of that time another gentleman.
Okay, and that other gentleman has since submitted his resignation?
I believe so.
And what is Ms. Ingram doing today? What's her job title?
She works on on implementing the Affordable Care Act.
Okay, who promoted her to that position?
I would have moved her into that position.
Why would you promote somebody to that position who was in charge of the exempt organization division, which certainly has had some controversy over the last couple years, under an investigation?
Because she is a superb civil servant, sir.
So she had nothing to do with this?
I wouldn't imagine so.
Even
By the
though
way, I can't speak to individual cases. I can say generally, we provided horrible customer service here. I will admit that. We did. Horrible customer service.
You
Whether it was
targeted an
politically
individual.
motivated or not is a very different
You
question.
targeted an individual, an American who still doesn't know to this day why he was question number 26.
All right, time has expired. Mr. Becerra is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your testimony. And let me key off of something, Mr. Miller, you said. You said foolish mistakes were made. I think the President actually said it better. He said that the handling of those tax-exempt applications in that process at the IRS was outrageous and intolerable. No excuse. And as much as we know that the folks at IRS have a thankless job because they have to go and tell their fellow Americans that they may be audited or they have to do this work understaffed, we have to maintain the confidence in the system because it's a voluntary system of payment of our taxes.
Agreed.
And so you are right, it was a foolish mistake, but the President's even more correct that it was outrageous and intolerable. Now, let me also focus on something, Mr. George, you said. When you were asked, was there any finding or evidence of political motivation here, you said no.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And so what we find is a situation where inexcusable activity took place because it erodes the confidence of the American people in a system where they participate voluntarily.
Right there, within a minute of each other. Not only did it say a voluntary tax system, and one agreed, but participate in it voluntarily. So, Ed, why don't you explain to them how that works?
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us again tonight, and for those who are going to listen to this afterwards. We appreciate those who listen afterwards because we know people are paying more attention and getting this. And people are listening, and people are responding to this. But I want to get into one thing, too, where you brought up Exhibit 05051. You can type that in on YouTube or the Internet. You can watch the video yourself. There are several other videos, too. One where $9 trillion is missing for the Federal Reserve. And then there was an update that says now there's over $11 trillion missing from the Federal Reserve. Wasn't that interesting how money keeps missing out of these public employees, agencies that we the people own? So who's stealing our money? because that also too goes to House Resolution 192, the Bankruptcy Act, where lawful Americans are not supposed to pay taxes. And you can even type that in, tribal sovereignty in the United States. You can type that in. Indians and natives are not to pay taxes. That's by law. And when I publicize that in our newsletters out when I do the talk shows and publicize that out. Of course, I won't be able to get back on YouTube until Wednesday again. But I'm on Facebook again until Tuesday. But this is the one thing that we have these things that are already in place that protects us natives. But we've been taught for the last 40 years by grandparents, parents, and others, you have to register and pay taxes. You have to do this, or you have to pay your property taxes because the schools need money. No, they don't. The schools have the money. I know I recalled the school board in 2002 and proved they embezzled $30 million. Doug Hunt was the chair of the school board at the time, County Commissioner of Lincoln County, and he is one of the participants of owning one of the banks in our community. So this is the one thing that these men and women have, where they're shoveling money around, and then they're blaming you, the people, that they don't have money from us. And that's exactly what they're doing. And I want to read for so you comprehend that every state must confirm first place the Constitution of the United States, and then submit Constitution particle of the state. So that is your original Constitution that everybody has to go by. Okay, that is not the corporation constitution. And so they're obligated to go by the Constitution. And this decision was done in 1840. This is before the 1941 Administrative Act of the British Vatican Christian Contracts. And this is what's trying to get people to comprehend this stuff, because this stuff is really real, how they come after us. Rape, robbing, and pillaging. I know I'm doing this right now with property taxes. I'm getting ready. I'm filing paperwork on it, and so we'll see what happens in time on this. I know 2 other people right now that have filed, and they're still on their land, even though that the sheriff was supposed to come out to the door, and they never came out to the door. Because we're, like me, we're keep filing on these men and women. Prove the taxes. Prove the taxes. And you got to realize and accept that in New Hampshire, the Superior Court, not Supreme, the Superior Court in New Hampshire stated that the sheriff has no arresting authority whatsoever. He is a corporation man. And that's all what the sheriff is a corporation man. He does not work for we the people when it comes down to it. He's supposed to take a constitutional oath. He's supposed to be the head law enforcement of each county. But when they violate their own constitution, oath that they take to we the people. And this is the one thing that people have got to comprehend, that these men and women don't care about you. They don't even care, most of them don't even care about their own children. And that's where we've got to wake up to reality. And people will always go that they go to my church and they're religious and they do this and they do that. Well, ask them bluntly. Ask them bluntly what they're going to do on the situations. Ask them bluntly how they've handled stuff in the community. Read the paper. You got to learn how to read between the lines in the newspaper. That's the one thing most people don't comprehend. Because the newspaper writes things for their own personal and financial gain. Most of the time, I have served the newspaper in my state, my county, on what I'm doing with the property taxes, and I got more that I'm getting ready to serve them. But I mean, the thing is that these newspapers are supposed to be writing what's going on in the community, but they can pick and choose. It's like people think that they have county reporters or news reporters that go to city and county meetings, and they don't. The city and county have their own people that they pay to write the stories for them. And it's true that there is no real reporters in the public meetings anymore. And once you start comprehending how the system has sat there and turned their back on you and turned their back on we the people, and I'm talking the system of even the newspapers, elected and public employees, and the system. And these are things that people have to comprehend the facts on these things, that they're real. This is not imaginary. This is the one thing that people got to start comprehending, what your elected and public servants are really doing for you. It's like I even sent a letter dealing with who owns the children. That deals with income tax because everybody wants their children write-offs. Which, to me, I'm sort of stunned that people would make tax write-offs on their children before they're even 18, and why they would even put their children in the system at that point. So when you put your children in the system at that point, and you tell them that when they turn 16 they need a driver's permit, or 15 or 16, and you need a driver's license to travel on the roads that we the people own, and that's right, we the people own the 48 states. The elected and public employees of the British government, the Vatican, your churches don't own us. And we know that the ministers and these men and women tell you stuff that you are supposed to comply to because that's how they make their income, by donations. And then if they don't have enough income, all they do is send in a write-off to the tax company, the state tax company, and they write it off. So when it comes down to it, they don't need to have money and finances on a lot of the stuff with the churches. They're a 501c3 through a 501c through or 501c through 9. And so, if you don't know what a 501c is, please read it. Do your research, comprehend. Because when you do a 501c3 through 9, you have to put up another agency. And most of your elected and public servants recommend that you put a school or a church if your 501c3 fails. So they wanted to keep it in their own system. And that's what their administrator's rule says. I know I've done 501c3 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's like, and then, of course, I got thrown out of the 501c3 from the state of Oregon because they were upset because I wasn't verifying an income to them. And, of course, you don't have to. It's like read the administrative rules. Of course, I didn't make an income out of it. I mean, that was the other point. I didn't have an income coming in or out of the structure of my 501c3. I just threw it up there and just was going up to Capitol, and just in case there was a conflict of interest, a lot of people were helping me out. I'd go to lunch or something like that, and somebody would take care of my lunch or things like that because they knew what I was doing. And it was interesting sometimes up at the Capitol because I would have public servants even pay for my lunch because they liked what I was doing. But they couldn't alter their position of employment. So you have to consider these things. When you have honorable public employees, you have to respect them. And we do have honorable public police officers or peace officers, whatever you want to call them this week. We do have a few of them out there that won't go harassing you. I mean, we have a video up on our website, new.Oregon Trackers, where you can see a California peace officer, and that's what I call him, because the guy got pulled over with no tags, no license, and he was explaining to the cop that this is what he was doing, getting out of the system, and the cop actually said, hey, I know what you're doing. I respect that point of view. So because I respect that point of view, I'm going to let you go, but you make sure you get the rest of the filing, and then if you watch our video, he even explained to him on the video how to add a few more things to his filing to get out of the system, out of the British corporation system. And so when we have honorable men and women like this in our servitude, we have to respect the ones that are honorable. And so when they are honorable, we have to respect them. And so when you do get an honorable one, don't forget to make sure that, people do it. We don't make it all public, because you make it public, then the other guys that are in the system will go after them, because They want their income for their tickets and citations. And remember, when you get a ticket, it is a bill of lading. So when it is a bill of lading, they're trying to want you to pay for the structure for their employment. That's why these guys are making over $100,000 a year. And I always find it always interesting when you get these cops that say, "Oh no, we only start at $30,000 a year." I hate to wake the truth up to you folks, but $30,000 a year was back in 1980. I know. I was going into the field, and that's what the starting wage was. That was back in 1980 in the Bay Area of San Francisco. So when they sit there and tell you what they're not doing or how this or that affects things, remember, a lot of them are not honorable. So when you're sitting there forcing yourself to pay your income tax, state and federal, and I'm going to read a piece here on that one, because I want people to comprehend that what is the year again? 1933, when they did the Bankruptcy Act. You have to remember, when they did the Bankruptcy Act, the corporation went bankrupt to we the people. We the people didn't go bankrupt to the corporation. Because there is a thing called, if you lend money, it's your responsibility and it's your liability to go get it back. You can't go to a court system technically because you are supposed to be one-on-one. And so when you do your affidavits and these type of things, an affidavit must contain the following. A matter must express to be resolved. Commerce, truth, and sovereignty. Truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. An unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce. An unrebutted affidavit becomes judgment in commerce. And believe me, I know I filed these affidavits with them, even on my own property taxes. The first letter I filed on property taxes was 2013, and that's when John Kitzhaber was governor. And I filed it with the tax collector, the county commissioners, the state attorney general, the federal government. And I had this thing, I think it was like 28 pages long, and I had all the federal laws in it, property taxes were voluntary. I have all the laws in it that through the Supreme Court that says you don't have to pay property taxes. And so this is how they're continually to go after people to rape, rob, and pillage. And people say, well, these men and women, and I'm going to say it again, oh, they're religious. No, they're not. Why would they rape, rob, and pillage your children? Why would they steal your children and put them in the system? And if you know, when a child gets in the system, doesn't matter how old they are, they're supposed to strip search. Every time they go to anything of the juvenile department, they strip search them. That's rape, folks. So you're allowing these people to rape your children by complying with this stuff. And so when you do an affidavit, we always recommend that you put the law in here. Silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak. That's your elected and public employees. When they don't respond, this is silence that says that they agree to your terms, too. And you always put that in your affidavits. And we do have that up on the website, and I do email it with all my affidavits and everything I do, and I post it every once in a while up on New Oregon Trackers, United States for America Republic, Elected and Public Service Oversight, Civil War, 1866, Lawful Bloodline Americans, and Recall Kate Brown. So this is the one thing that when you're filing your instruments, to make sure that your instruments have these type of things in it so it covers you. And I want to get into this other point because we got good news with President Trump of the corporation is not reactivating DACA again. That's good. That's going to save people tax money. And if we could get all the illegals and immigrants off of the food stamp program, that pays for the wall in 1 year. because these people are on the system, and that's $280 billion a year with these men and women on the system, your foreigners on your system. So when he passed this thing that came out that he says that if you are able to prove that a public servant is committing human trafficking, they are to lose their assets, their livelihood, and go to jail. And to make it clear to you on immigration, the United States president has statutory authority to keep anyone out of the country from any reason he thinks. And that's per 8 U.S.C. 1182. So we have laws in place that were started from the Constitution, and that's part of the original Immigration Act of 1774. So when people read the original Immigration Act compared to what the democracy people have done who got bought and paid for by foreign countries and, you know, foreign systems that to keep them in the system, like Democrats like to have all these voters to vote for them to destroy our country so we can have all these illegals in our country, so they come and get food stamps. And then they say, well, Ed, you know, who's going to tend the gardens? Who's going to pick the food, you know, in Florida, California, Georgia, if it ain't for the immigrants in Oregon? Hey, get your kid off his lazy butt. I mean, I did that. I did a lot of things when I grew up to have a job. But the other point, too, this is a bold lie that the 16th Amendment was never ratified. Per Article 5 of the Constitution, this is Congressional Record, House, June 13, 1967, page 15641 through 15646, and the case that was done on that right after that was Dwight versus Turner, 1968, made it very clear that the 16th Amendment was never ratified. Now, they did ratify, they did put a 16th Amendment through in 1940, and that was done administratively, but that only pertains to nationals and low-C citizens. So if you're a capital C citizen by the Constitution, you have rights. Lower C, as the 14th Amendment, you don't have rights. And that's the one thing that people have to get this clarified, because the federal Constitution makes a clarified distinction between native-born on this soil, okay? That's 5 or more generations, and citizens and nationals of the United States and corporation, compared to 2.15.5 of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. When they pass that administratively, the Senate and the House, Congress, the federal Congress, gets to decide on citizenship. And that goes back to the president on his authority to allow people into our country. And this is how we are able to protect our land, our soil, so our families are not assaulted and theft. And that's the one thing that people have got to make sure that they pay attention to these things that are protecting them. So many people have been so Disneyized, propaganda by TV, that they don't live in real reality. They live in whatever TV program is going on, and that's a lot of people's mental abilities. And that's why they call it TV programming, because they're programming your mind and you. And once you realize and start stepping out of that system, and stop being programmed, you know that you have some rights. And until you have rights, you don't know where your standing is. And you have to know where your standing is. You have to know where your family's standing is, your children's standing is. Because, see, if you don't stand up for yourself and your children, your bloodline, there's no future for you. And you have to realize that your bloodline speaks a lot. Your bloodline is the structure. And I talk to people all the time, they're going, oh, Ed, what the hell does a bloodline mean? There's no such thing as a bloodline in this country. Anybody can come in this country. No, they cannot. And that has an effect on the tax rolls. People go, well, who's supposed to pay taxes? Well, if you actually read the IRS code, by law, all elected and public immigration, all elected and public employees, and that's under also too what is that, 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act. And I do encourage people to read this, because this makes sure that if you have a public employee who's not registered, they can't even be in business. You want to also, too, make sure you get their stocks and bonds. We have done that in Lincoln County, and we've got the district attorney and we've got the judges on record saying they don't need bonds, they don't need a oath, they're just who they are. They can have any authority they want. And we have those on YouTube video. And eventually we'll get a lot of those set up on our new.Oregon trackers. I think we have some of them, but I'm going to get the rest of them put up there so people can actually see the videos. I mean, I've even got videos where the cops have come after me and put guns to my head for telling them they don't have legal authority to serve a warrant, because a warrant has to be issued by a grand jury. A judge cannot issue a warrant. And so this is like when they come to your house for taxes, the IRS agent cannot do anything. But if you do fill out your tax forms every year, like some people do, not everyone does, but when you fill out your tax forms, you're agreeing, because it says that you are agreeing to commit perjury, basically is what it's saying. But you can't commit perjury because you can't pre-sign something or autograph something, commit perjury, if you're not aware of what you're doing. But they're not going to tell you this stuff. So the whole point is about being properly educated, knowing what's going on in your circumstances of your system in our country, knowing if you're lawful bloodline, native, or knowing if you're an immigrant. And if you're an immigrant, that means you set up your assets, and if you do acquire property, technically by the laws and the Constitution, immigrants cannot own property whatsoever. But if you do set it up for your generations, 5 or more generations down the road when they become lawful, and that doesn't mean that you can resell it, re-barter it, do anything. That means keeping it so you're doing a contract, so that way that property goes to your bloodline. See, there are things in our system that they put in to protect us. And that is the one thing that you need to realize if you're lawful, how to protect yourself. And if you are a legal immigrant, how to protect yourself. And that is the one point that, see, I don't have a problem. Most of us natives don't have a problem with legal immigration. I mean, but we have a problem with immigration, period, because for generations we've just been raped, robbed, and pillaged. You know, and everybody goes, well, it was the British government who did it. No, it wasn't just the British government. The Spaniards did it. You know, there's been more than one that has come over and done this stuff. So it is comprehending how these things work, who's involved in the responsibility that is tearing up our soil or land. I mean, it's like all this excavation they're doing. You know, I mean, they got this program on TV going after gold in Alaska, and they're using backhoes to dig the ground up. To me, and they're not refilling up their land, what they're destroying or anything. To me, that's a crime. To me, that's destruction of Mother Nature. Just because you think that you're going to be able to go get a couple pounds of gold and you're going to move a mountainside to get it, it's ridiculous. We're destroying our children's future by these type of stuff that is going on. And so, and everybody goes, well, I do this, I watch that Gold Fever or whatever TV a couple times on YouTube, and these guys are, trying to make ends meet, but then they sit there and go, well, I pay the taxes. Yeah, because you're paying taxes that's giving you what they call legal authority to destroy the land. And remember, legal is not of the United States. Legal is British Vatican administrative rules, statute codes and administrative rules. I mean, it's like when you're putting a house up and they go, well, you need a building permit. Well, that's tax, folks. Taxes are voluntary. So you have to make sure that you comprehend what a tax is and what a tax is not. And you don't have to pay, what do they call that? Building permit fees and all that. I know. I built my home without it. And so that's the one thing. We don't have to comply to these things. But you do have to put your affidavits. You do have to put your standing up. So that way you're standing and clarifying for yourself of what you're doing. You have to do these things. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And there's numerous templates all over the internet on how to do this stuff. Literally, there's numerous templates. But also, too, read the templates. Go through them. There's a lot on the internet dealing with resending your tax structure, resending your income and federal income tax. And so when you fill out those information pages, make sure that you go through, but always quote their laws in their structure. Because a lot of people don't quote their laws. A lot of people don't quote the administrative rules. And they just put this stuff up or put their letters out, and they have no evidence backing up their affidavits. And an affidavit has to have a resolve in it. An affidavit has to have a structure in it of completion and what their administrative rules of how they're supposed to react to you and what they're supposed to do for you. And so that is the one valuable point that people need to comprehend how this stuff really works. And I'm trying to get my computer back because my computer is freezing up again. I don't want Bing, but anyhow, I got to crash my computer. I'll be back on here in just a second. But this is the one thing when it comes to your income taxes, when it comes to your property taxes. Property taxes are mandatory for elected and public servants and immigration, contractors to the government because they're getting public funds. That's how they keep their system going by themselves. You'll notice when you go try to ask for a W-2 form for the county, they won't give you one. And, of course, you can always file a W-9 on them, so that way they have to report the income if you're a legal citizen, legal national, or like a public employee. You could always file a 1099 on them and make sure that they're reporting that income. But they don't report this stuff. And people think that they report this stuff. No, they do not. They pocket the money. They have 3, sometimes 4 books. And Walter Bruin is a good one on CAFA reports. And you want to look at Walter Bruin's CAFA. The man has got 30 years research doing this CAFA for your cities, your counties, even your school taxes and all this stuff, how it works. He's got all this stuff up there. And I met him back in 1998 at the Oregon State Capitol, and that was at Senator Gary George's office and a few other senators' House Representatives' office, because he was bringing up all this stuff and asking questions, and so I was put in, go get the information from him, which I did. And then in 2005, Department of Transportation, Oregon ODOT, misplaced and still never recovered $500 million. Then they replaced another $250 million a couple years ago. And then they're whining to you going, we need more taxes, we need more of this, we need more of that, when they don't. See, all it is propaganda, what they're doing to us people. Rape, robbing, and pillaging is piracy. And these men and women know it is piracy. But do they care? Hell no, they don't care for you. You got to comprehend that these men and women, without rape, robbing, and pillaging, they don't have an income. That's how they get their income, is rape, robbing, and pillaging. Are you complying with stuff that you're not supposed to comply with? And so when you start looking at all this stuff that is going on around you, and you start accepting these facts that you're dealing with, and realizing that you don't have to be obligated to pay their salaries, because under House Resolution 192, they're supposed to send you a statement that technically we're supposed to autograph on. And I'm going to be putting that one out here. I think we have it up on the YouTube, Oregon Trackers, that I think we have it up on Oregon Trackers dealing with the voluntary structure of that as well. As far as I know, we do, and so I encourage you to look at new.Oregon Trackers, because we do have that. Not only that, we have the 35 major federal court cases on taxation, and then it was Larry B. Beecraft. You can always type in his name, And he proved it in Congress and sued them. He was an attorney that sued them over the income tax structure and won. And so this is real when these things happen. It's not imaginary. So once you comprehend that taxes are voluntary, you know, and that is the one thing too. Yeah, we know that, the foreign immigrants from Mexico have raped, robbed, and pillaged. And they just nailed another couple guys recently in Texas for raping children. And this is the one thing that is amazing, that these people get away with this stuff. I've even dealt with children that were raped in my community, 13 to 16-year-old girls raped by Mexicans, where Judge Branford let them walk. Wouldn't charge them with rape. But basically they were told to go get on welfare. And it's like, what? You're telling these kids to go on welfare? To put them on the system so that way they're not responsible? That's what this is. And the judges in the state of Oregon literally are doing this. Are terrorizing Governor Kate Brown, who endorses this stuff. That's the one thing. And not only that, she's not even an American. She's born in Spain. She has no right to be in office, period. I know. I filed treason charges on her, too. She has no right to be in office. A lot of these people don't have rights to be in their positions or their privileged category of employment. We're trying to get people to stand up on this, with this, to stand together on this is very difficult, because most people want to go watch their TV. They want their football games. You know, they don't care about their, sometimes even major people don't even care about their own children, because their football game is more important than their kids. And that's the saddest part we live. They don't educate their children. They go to the school system and they don't get educated. They get programmed. And then the kids today are being told in the school how to turn mommy and daddy for property tax structure. They're being told if your mommy and daddy raises your voice at you, you call the police. So that is the one thing that people are just being taught this stuff, programmed. I mean, when we went to school, we backtalked our mother. We got backhanded. You went and cried to a teacher or something, the teacher would look at you and go, you deserved it. We don't want to hear it. Today, a teacher goes, oh, I know how to make money off it. Let me call the police department. And that's what they do. They call the police department. And they turn you in for assault and battery. Harm to a child, even though it's your child. The state says that you don't have a right to discipline your child. It's our right to discipline your child. And I know I've written to the senators of Oregon, asked them to determine and prove who owns the children. I haven't got a response back. I got another one I'm getting ready to go out and with another letter to them here pretty soon on traveling. Because even ORS law says you don't have to pay the tax on your your car, your vehicle, your covered wagon. It says you don't have to pay that tax. So too, it says you don't have to have a driver's license. That's another tax. Remember, all this stuff is taxes. That is the one thing that people need to realize, that these things are taxes. Every time that you pay for something, it's a tax in an elected and public employee structure. Some states have state income taxes. State sales taxes. That's voluntary as well. In Oregon, if we go over to the state of Washington, we just show them your ID here, or your even your own ID that you might have put together yourself. And so when you do that, that was the one thing that you go to Washington, that you're exempt from paying our taxes because you live in a no-tax state. That's the other thing that gets to me. We live in a no-tax state, and they want your state and federal income tax, then they want your property taxes, and we're not supposed to have these taxes. Once people realize we are not a democracy, and everybody keeps going, well, we're a democracy, we're a democracy. We are not a democracy. We're a republic form of government. And that is the one thing that people need to realize, that we are a Republican form of government. That means man and woman are responsible for themselves. When they pass administrative rules, that's administrative rules. That's for them. That's not for us. Elected and public employees are bounded by administrative rules. Elected and public employees are bounded by paying income taxes, federal and state. And so, and the other point is, I'll bring this up again, you can type in Coastal Point. Superior Court rules sheriff does not have arresting authority. And I've actually got the actual court case, because I called the Superior Court case up and I got it. So when they're coming for property taxes and stuff, they don't have authority to come on your land. Neither do the city police officers. City police officers are nothing more than tax revenue collectors, and that's been proven more than one time, even in court. Even the Superior Court has stated that police have no arresting authority. Their authority is to monitor and to arrest elected and public servants or immigrants who violate administrative rules. They don't have any rights to protect you whatsoever. Police officers don't have a right. And people will say, well, I pay my taxes on that. This is what I pay for. No, it don't. Been dealing with them. I mean, I've even had my house robbed by the cops. I even got convicted for my house being robbed by the Toledo Police Department, so they can steal stuff. And this is the thing that gets to me. People say, well, Ed, what are you bitching about? Well, I mean, I should have the right to, if I was home. I wasn't home at the time. And the one time I was home and they arrested me on my own property for them robbing my home. But this is the one thing that when you tell your kids and you tell other people that you have to pay income taxes, you have to realize when you tell these people that you have to pay income taxes, you're not telling the whole truth. You're not being honorable in your statements. See, that's the one thing that you have to realize. What you tell people on that is how you are dealing with things. And income tax and federal income tax and state income tax and property taxes, this system is voluntary. And you have to be able to educate your children to know what is lawful and legal in this country. And immigrants don't have rights over lawful Americans. I don't care what a judge tells you. Judges don't work for we the people. That's the one thing. They don't. They're administrative one-court judges. They're Vatican-controlled court judges. So when you go into court, you have to know how to ask and clarify jurisdiction. But I do recommend before you go into court, always put an affidavit asking them to clarify and confirm what court you're in, what jurisdiction of the court you are in. Because if you don't clarify that, and the minute that judge calls you up and you stand up, and if you don't say I'm here as special appearance or my life was threatened at gunpoint, that's the only reason why I'm here. There's other ways of putting it together and saying things, but you want to make sure that you clarify what you're saying to get that judge to comprehend that you're not in his jurisdiction. Once you comprehend that you're not in his jurisdiction, and he knows you're not in his jurisdiction, that's when you start becoming, you start becoming, responsible for your own self. You become liable for your own self. See, that's the one thing that you have to create is your own liability for you, yourself, and you. Once you do that, then that way you have rights. Once you comprehend of your rights and freedom, that you don't have to be enslaved to the churches or to the government employees because your churches are supporting and endorse this. And that's the one thing, because if you tell your pastor something like that, they will definitely turn you in Pastors do that because they want to make sure that they have these rights for themselves. Their family is protected before yours is. That is the one thing that nobody's going to do it for you unless you do it. So this is the thing is when it comes to income taxes and property taxes, which I'm fighting right now, I've sent the emails to the local newspaper here. I haven't got a response back from them. And I'm going to be proceeding with some more to them here coming up because, if I have to get prepared, I'm going to be prepared. It's just that simple. I have no choice in the matter. And this is where people have got to realize that we're supposed to be standing together. It's supposed to be we the people. We the people. And once people realizes we the people, then this way we have standing. Then this way we have rights. But until we start standing up for our rights, and until we start inserting our rights, that's the one thing. We have to insert our rights. And so when we don't insert our right, we lose our rights. So, and I just encourage people to do the education, to pay attention to what's going on around you. Pay attention to what the circumstances are with you. Because this is the one thing when it comes in to knowing how to deal with your property issues and your money, your income, your debt notes of the Federal Reserve. And you can always look that up at UC 12-411. Even federal law says you can't pay debt with the debt, and that includes property taxes. So when you cannot do this and pay these things in a structure where they're going after you for income, and that's what they do, is they go after you for their income. Because the more that they're able to rape, rob, and pillage, that's what they're putting in their pocketbook. And so I've been going through this basic month-long series on income and federal taxes and property taxes, and it's knowing that when in the state of Oregon, we live in a no-tax state. And so because we live in a no-tax state, we have to start forcing our rights. And if we don't force our rights, nobody else is going to force our rights. So you have to be responsible. When are people going to be responsible? And that's what I ask all the time. When are people going to be responsible? It's for our benefit. It's for our livelihoods, our children to know that what freedom is. The schools don't teach them what freedom is in school anymore. I mean, it's interesting because most people go, well, we're a democracy. Well, I like people to prove that because when you do the Pledge of Allegiance, it says we're a republic. And it's paying attention to the words that are being brought to our attention. And that is our responsibility to pay attention to what's going on around us. Literally, it's our responsibility. Excuse me. And so when you want to educate your children, we do have the laws up above. We do have the information out there that we are providing. I read them, I put them up, they wrote them, we quote them. And so that's the best way of doing it, the way I look at it, so that way there's no conflict of interest. See, we want to stop those conflict of interest deals. And those conflict of interest could only be stopped by you. Those conflict of interest could only be protected by you for your family. And so when you're doing this, and it's like if you do have children in the corporation school system, make sure you put an affidavit that you can take your kid out any time. The state don't own your child. When I had kids around, we did something similar to that 20 years ago. We went and got the kids one time, and they were trying to tell us we couldn't take the kids out of school, and we told them to get in the car, and they're like, we're going to call the cops on you. And I said, do it, and you ain't going to have a job. And they didn't like that. Of course, they got upset with me because I was on the local school committee at that time, too. But I wasn't playing their game. And this is the one thing that people got to realize, To these men and women, it's a game. There is nothing more than a game to them. That's how they know they're making their income from you. And that's what they want to make sure, that you have this structure to pay them. They don't want you to have freedom, because if you had freedom, you wouldn't be able to have rights that they don't have rights, because they're public servants. They have to go by administrative rules. We, the lawful bloodline Americans, do not have to go by administrative rules. And the other point, too, that we're going to be getting into is vaccines here probably next Sunday night. Because I want to hit the vaccine structure, because we got people doing that. And that's another tax that we're getting taxed. People are being told if they don't vaccinate their kids, the state's going to steal their kid. Well, they can't steal your kid. Well, they can. They've done it to lots of people. But you have to file for your rights. You have to know how to talk to what they call is a terrorist that comes to your door. Most peace officers won't be involved. They won't put their job on the line. Because you can sue a cop. And I do have the templates up on new.org and trackers, as well as suing a judge. So this is the one thing that is bringing these things up to you, to comprehend how to protect yourself, put your money aside. And I guess the biggest thing people are talking about right now is penny stocks. Of course, I don't get into any of that myself. You know, don't have the assets to even play that game, but if I had the assets, I'd much rather put that in the land, so that way I have more freedom on my area. And that's the other point, that I do recommend people growing their own gardens, growing their own food, collecting their own rainwater, doing this stuff, collecting their structure for themselves. Because if you don't protect yourself, there is no future for you. Lawful bloodline American, native, or whatever. You know, that's the one thing that you've got to do, is protect yourself. It's like BLM will say, well, you need a permit to cut wood. Well, prove to me I need a permit. And also, too, treaties are equal and supersedes the Constitution. Natives don't have to have permits. And that's the one thing that you have to realize. If you're native, learn the law. Learn their statute codes and administrative rules, because remember, those statute codes and administrative rules apply to them. Elected and public servants, registered church members, registered voters. And people will say, well, Ed, what is a registered church member? Well, your church is registered and the state is a non-profit, so when you go to that church, you know, and you think your pastor don't know your name, you think when you put a check in that box that it doesn't go through the treasury check to know who's in that church of registration? Oh, trust me, that's a fact. They do pay attention. Your pastor writes all that stuff down. He has to write that stuff down in his book, in his, what do they call that? Tax book. Because that's what they call incoming revenue that he doesn't have to pay. Water, electricity bills they write off. So, this is the one thing that you've got to do. And that's the other point with city water. I'm getting ready to put an affidavit into them for them to prove that I owe a water bill. Because I live in a city, where's the proof? Where's the proof I owe a water bill? Because, see, technically, our ancestors, when you look at the old water stocks and bonds that were first purchased for this country, it was set up for an investment point for we the people. So we had water. It wasn't set up for these bankers to go sell this stuff and make a profit. It was not designed that way for them to go get a profit off of we the people. But they got away with it because people were not educated in this and allowed this stuff to happen. The original structure of this, and they say, well, it's like we have a public utility commission in my community. Well, they say it's public. Well, it ain't publicly owned. It's corporation-owned, they're claiming, and so I've got to deal with them on that one, including with House Resolution 192. How come you're forcing me to pay something where I'm not, technically not supposed to be paying this? And I've got that with the UCC of Oregon. I mean, not the UCC, but the Utility Commission. And I think we have that letter up on the New.Oregon Trackers. But I put this stuff up, people, so we get to know what, why, and how. I write these letters to put them out there, so when I get these letters back from them, we get to know who, what, why, and how, and who's responsible. And that means they're responsible to us, so that means we have to be responsible to them and protecting our children, our neighbor children. And it's our responsibility to protect the neighborhood. You know, I mean, you know, especially I do that. If a cop's are in a neighborhood, I want to know who they're writing a citation to. I want to know the purpose of them pulling them over. And I have personally got involved in that stuff, and I've personally been attacked over it and kidnapped and held for ransom over it. But this is the one thing is standing up for your neighbors. Because it really disturbs me because, see, I get a lot of religious people say, you're not supposed to do this to your neighbors, but they do it. That's what stuns me. All these religious people will say this, that, and the other thing, but they do it, but it's acceptable for them. It's not acceptable for you. See, that's the one thing that really disturbs me, how these men and women get away with this stuff, doing this stuff, and saying these things to the general public. Because they want you to be liable for their assets. And the truth is, a judge can be sued. A cop can be sued in his personal capacity. And that's the one thing you want to make sure that you know what personal capacity actually means. That means they're supposed to be licensed and bonded. And if they're not licensed and bonded, you know, and most of the cops, when you ask them for their bond and insurance, some of them say, well, we don't have that. We don't have to give it to you. Yes, they do. But you have to file on that. See, that's the one thing that you have to file on these things. It's your responsibility to file on these things, not theirs. See, and that's the one thing they'll let you know. It's not their responsibility. They'll tell you right up front. They don't care. Because they care more about their money income than they care about that. They want to make sure that you're paying their tax structure. And that's a fact. They want you to pay their tax structure. And so when you're sitting there forced to pay their tax structure in these things, they're making sure that you're liable for them. Which we don't have to be reliable because the Constitution says man doesn't owe man anything. Period. We don't owe another man anything. And once you comprehend that you're not liable to pay another man something on this, or another woman, you start becoming what the word comes freedom. The real word of freedom. So that's the one thing that you want to make sure you know what freedom really is. And it's up to you to know the definition of the tax structure, and that's the one thing I do repeat myself a lot on this. I do recommend people watch the movie or video Theft by Deception. Because the Supreme Court has never proved that labor is taxable. So if you have labor, you're not liable for the structure of these taxes. So you have to comprehend what liability is for you and for those around you. And it's up to you, yourself, to do this, and your partner. Yeah, and that's the one thing I do recommend, that you sit there and make sure that you both comprehend the truth. Because you guys need to make sure that you are standing with one another in property taxes, income taxes, because that's our responsibility to not only us, but to the children. Even if they're not our own children, but other children, it's our responsibility to protect them. So if you protect them, then that way we don't have the issues that we have today that people are arguing about that, oh, I lost my, the IRS is knocking on my door because I didn't pay income tax. Well, don't sign a contract. See, that's the one thing that you are not liable to sign a contract. So when you sign a contract with them, and then you're agreeing to their terms. And so when you agree to their terms, you're agreeing to the structure that you're saying that you are accepting their debt. And that's the one thing, people, you don't have to accept their debt. Quit agreeing to these contracts. It's like if you get kidnapped and hauled to jail, they want you to sign a contract in jail to get out of jail when they hold you for ransom for a traffic ticket, no driver's license. Those are taxes. So comprehending those are taxes, and you realize that those are taxes, and you know this for a fact they are taxes. And, so you don't want to put yourself in these liabilities where you're being attacked. And you don't want to put yourself in these positions where you're putting your family where you're being attacked. And so when you do this stuff, you have to protect yourself, number one. And until you protect yourself, you cannot protect your family. And so once you protect your family, then that way you're secured. You have standing. And that's what you want to be able to do, is have standing. So, but anyhow, I'm going to open up the floor. If people got questions, we'll get into questions and answers. We'll throw some more information out. But I like to make sure that people comprehend that taxes are voluntary. I'm not telling you what to do. I am not an attorney. I am not a lawyer. I'm nobody. I'm just nobody. So I just bring the information to the general public for their structure, so that way they have standing. And it's like when you go to court, you have to know the standing when you're in court. You have to know where you are at in court.
All participants are unmuted.
Yep. Anyhow, the floor is open. Okay. Well, I guess we have no one who speaks up right now. Okay, that's fine. So, but the one thing is when you're looking at the points that we are looking at these things and bringing these points to life and bringing these points forward. I mean, like I said, it is, property taxes are voluntary. So make sure that you know what's voluntary and what's not voluntary. Protect yourself, protect your family. Because that's what it's all about. If you want freedom, and everybody says, well, we want freedom, we want our rights. Well, you have to prove you have rights. And until you prove you have rights, you don't have rights. So comprehending what your rights are, doing the legal and lawful research, and make sure that you have the comprehension of what's going on here. And that is the one thing that you want to make sure that you have the comprehension on these things. You want to make sure you know what is going on around you. So, but anyhow, we got nobody wants to speak up at this point. And we'll get my stuff out on the income tax, more out there, and on my property tax. I'll start getting that filed out so people can start seeing what I've been filing, what I'm doing here. Because, I mean, what choice do I have? I mean, I'm disabled. I had to spend money on my companion because my companion ended up with cancer, so that was a lot of money for cancer surgery. So this is the one thing that, people have got to start realizing, that we have other obligations And my obligations are not to the elected and public employees. Their obligation is to us, we the lawful Americans. And that's what the obligation is, to us. So anyhow, I take it that we don't have, no one wants to speak up at this point, so I guess we might even do an early show tonight then. And I do suggest that people go to new.org and trackers, look at this stuff, read this stuff, pay attention to what's going on, and that's the whole point. Pay attention to what's going on. And that's the whole thing, is the future of your children. Paying attention to the future of your children, your assets, your needs, your structure. If you don't pay attention to your needs, your structure, what future does your bloodline have? And I encourage you to ask and make sure that you know what your bloodline is. Comprehending what your bloodline means to you and what it means to those around you. So, but anyhow, seeing that we don't have no one that wants to speak up tonight, I guess we will call an early evening tonight. And so we don't have an issue with that one. We appreciate those who are listening. We appreciate those who come and watch the videos afterwards. Question is, how do I sue a judge? Okay. Are you on my Facebook? Let me see if you're on my Facebook. If you're on my Facebook, I'll just send it to you. Because we do have that, to my recollection, that's supposed to be up on new.org and trackers, but if you're on my Facebook, friend, I'll just send it to you right now. Because I do have that right now in my file. So I will get that sent to you, and if you're not on my friend's Facebook, I'll find out here in a minute. I got so many files I'm trying to catch up to here. All right, here we go. Finally got a Facebook page. So, but yeah, no, I'll get you that, and I got the deal too of how to sue a judge and a cop, and I'll get both of those sent to you, so that way you have them. And there's more to that when you want to get into this, because remember, this is when you go after them, it's very dangerous when you go after them, and you have to make sure that whatever you put in writing is 100% facts. Oh, okay. I got your email. All right, I got it. Let me go get your email, and I'll do it that way. So, and you got to realize that these things, that when you go after somebody, so you have to look at your state and federal law and quote that in that structure. See, that's what it is. You have to quote these things in, and always put in USC, was that 183771 corpus delicti. Because I've been told by judges, if people don't have that in their complaint, and it is making sure that you have the evidence that you are injured, an injured victim. And you have to use that, man or woman, or even if a child's involved. And children are victims in a lot of stuff, especially when they steal your child for personal financial gain. That's why I'm glad to see that Trump has the new law out that says if you prove that they're part of all this, you can go after them for finances. And so that is the one thing that you can go after them for finances, and that's your responsibility to go after them for finances. And so that is one thing that you have in favor for you. Also, too, on that, you can go after the cop, too, and serve him grand theft auto charges. Now, I'm not sure which state you're in, but also, too, you should always look at your state, because your state will have the grand theft auto deals on that. Not only that, your state will have it with your public employees what they can and cannot do. I do suggest to everybody when you do go into the police department or the city and county, ask for a certified copy. Preferably go in personally. Right now I can't, and if I would be doing that. But because I can't do that personally, I would suggest that people need to go in personally and get a certified copy of what it says. And you want to make sure you get a certified copy of it. And once you got a certified copy of their job description, this way you know what they can and cannot do. And you want to make sure that you have the comprehension of knowing what they can and cannot do. So, all right, let me go a second. What is this? Just got this popped up. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing that I'll bring to your attention. If you're going to smoke hemp, grow your own. Don't buy the imitation crap and the fake crap because it's poison. Literally, it's poison. So anything that is not real hemp, don't purchase it. Preferably grow it yourself. Get somebody that you know who knows how to grow it for you. Because that is the one thing that people need to know, the difference of how these things work. Because hemp is a good medication. But you have to grow it yourself. Don't go buy it and everybody thinks, I can go in a weed shop, and so when I go into the weed shop, I have these rights to go into a weed shop. People, wake up. Okay? The one thing is you go in and you go into these weed shops, they got cameras in there, and the cops review the cameras. And people go, well, that doesn't affect me. It don't hurt me. And I get tired of telling people how ignorant are people. Because it just proves how stupid people are when they do this stuff. So be careful when you're taking medication, too. I don't care what kind of medication it is. Be careful when you're taking medication. And that is the one thing that people should be very careful about taking medication, too. Because medication depends on what it is, and if you're not familiar with it, it could really harm you. And that's the one thing that, I was blessed growing up because I had people around me that would, throw things my way. When we grew up, we were allowed in the bars. And, of course, if you got drunk and stupid in the bar, you were thrown out, never allowed to come back in. And if you were respectful, it would allow you to have a couple drinks in the bar. So that's the one thing is comprehending these things of what is lawful, what is legal. And illegal has nothing to do with we the people. It's British government administrative rules. I mean, even hemp was legal until 1937 when they passed the Marijuana Stamp Act, and you had to bring marijuana in. Oh, that's right, to the tax people to get a tax stamp. But see, the thing is that you don't have to get a tax stamp for hemp because it's already lawful, and it's lawful for lawful bloodline Americans and natives, part of native rituals. So, I mean, that's the one thing that just gets to me. People go, well, it violates the law, and I always ask them, whose law? What law are you talking about? Whose law are you implying? See, that's the one thing that people need to know, what the law is, what the jurisdictions are. And jurisdictions are go by the pole on the flag, whether it is a ball or an eagle, a spear. All those meanings on top of it have a big deal on the structure. And they really do have a big meaning on the jurisdiction when you walk into the court. And I would always recommend they take that flag out and put in the real flag or a peace flag in that court, but I always recommend walk into the court with a peace flag. I've got people that have told me that they walked in and with a white flag, and it's like, why would you go surrender yourself to them? You know, I don't get that one, throwing yourself to mercy on the court. I was taught that growing up. Throw yourself to mercy on the court. And, of course, you know, I started arguing with the courts with my first traffic ticket I got. And somehow I beat 90% of them in California when I didn't even know half the stuff I know now. So it's just going in and bringing this stuff up, bringing the points forward, bringing the truth forward, and knowing what you're talking about. And that has a lot to do with it. Do your research. Double check your research. Make sure you know what you're talking about. You know, that is the one thing that you've got to do and know what you're talking about. So, anyhow, seeing that we got nobody that would like to throw in 2 cents worth this evening, we're going to cut it off short tonight. I'm going to try to get Kawashu back on next Saturday because I want him to finish up on some of the things he was talking about. And I've got some questions I want to bring to his point, too, on this stuff, because this needs to be brought out. What he's been doing, he just went after BLM. They went after trying to write him another ticket, and he's schooling them right now. He had a video up that has over 70,000 hits right now. And so these are things that people need to pay attention to what's going on, how to defend yourself, knowing what your bloodline is, knowing the circumstances of what's around you, and most of all, knowing the jurisdiction of a court. And read. If you're going to get involved in the IRS structure, read the IRS code. The IRS is not a government agency. They're not even part of the United States. They're part of Washington, D.C., a foreign government in a foreign country. They are not American corporation whatsoever. So I want to make sure that people comprehend that these men and women are foreigners, and if they're not registered with the Foreign Registration Act, then this way you can go after them. And you want to make sure that you know how to go after them, because that is your responsibility to know how to go after these men and women. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, may the Great Spirit bless you with Mother Earth, and may Mother Earth provide food and shelter for you, and may the Creator look over you and your bloodline.
Thank you, Ed. It is April 1st, 2018, and I want to say this is not an April Fool's episode. This is a truthful, honest, straightforward episode, as we always do. Whatever information you glean or learn from this, you take liability for your actions. We do not take liability for your actions. We are not lawyers, we are not attorneys, and we are just living men and women who have learned and are willing to share our knowledge. And that is where they are afraid of. The corruption is afraid that we will share what we know. They've spent generations keeping us stupid, making sure our school system was all about, oh, we're just going to take this part away from the history, and then nobody knows about it in 2 generations.
Yeah, don't worry, Alex. I'll be emailing you this stuff in a minute. That's what I'm going through right now, and I'll send you my number again.
And, of course, interrupting is evidently acceptable.
Only when you're loud.
Oh, okay. Well, in the end, it is April 1st, 2018. It is 6:20 Pacific Standard Time. We do want to thank you for joining us and for listening and learning with us. And we will catch you next week, next Saturday, for another scary episode of Ed. Disclaimers by him. So, we'll See you later.